Well, good morning, everybody. What a fantastic turnout. It's just so amazing to look around this really grand ballroom and see people here from all over the world, different levels of knowledge probably about blockchain, but everybody interested in getting involved in this kind of blockchain revolution that we're seeing. So first of all, it falls to me to thank the organizers for having me. Gabriel, Saber, Jeremy, everyone here, people have been working, I think, since 1:30 a.m. to get this amazing ballroom ready and get the lights and the music and everything planned for the day. So thank you so much. I'm Helen Disney, as mentioned. I'm the CEO and founder of Unblocked events. Unblocked was really set up only about a year ago as a company to help professional people understand blockchain. I came into this industry 4 years ago knowing nothing. In my mind, I was highly skeptical. Bitcoin was sort of the dark web and drug dealers' money and very dodgy, shady thing, didn't understand it at all. Went to many conferences, organized many conferences where I still felt things were going over my head as someone who wasn't from a finance background or a technology background. So what I'm interested in is communicating about blockchain in a way that's accessible to people, that helps people get through the terminology, get through the jargon, get through some of the difficult concepts. And I think that's what we're going to do throughout this day. We're going to look at real-world applications of blockchain, which I love because it's a way of making things actually real for people. They can see what you can do with blockchain. I'm also going to look at the whole phenomenon of the rise of cryptocurrencies, the rise of initial coin offerings, and everything that's been happening over the past year. So I guess to kick off, what is blockchain? Blockchain came about as a result of Bitcoin, as a way of keeping track of all the transactions on the Bitcoin network. And we can't really understand blockchain without understanding the interaction between tokens or digital currencies and the distributed network that they operate on. But blockchain is also more than just simply a financial technology. It's actually going to allow us to do things in other industries to keep track of business processes, whether it's supply chain management, whether it's managing healthcare data, all kinds of other applications that blockchain is now starting to be used for. So although payments and currencies are very interesting, and there's a huge revolution that's happened with being able to pay peer-to-peer directly without a third party, we've also got even more innovation happening in other industries. And why can we do that? Well, it's because blockchain has these special properties. It's immutable, so it can't be edited, although some companies have also developed a so-called editable blockchain. We can talk about that later. It's highly secure. It's this peer-to-peer distributed network. And what that really does is it gives us this kind of trust layer on the internet that we haven't had before. So you and I can interact. We can share digital assets, knowing that we don't need another person in the middle of our transaction to help us trust the other person and know that the money is exchanged or the digital asset has been exchanged. Next slide. So what does blockchain mean for us? It's the largest distributed computing project in the world. If we talk about the Bitcoin blockchain, it's more powerful than Google. And you've probably all been aware, if you follow cryptocurrencies, since you're here, you probably do, that we're reaching all-time highs in Bitcoin price and other cryptocurrencies as well. I saw quite a funny tweet online the other day from someone who said, I wonder why my boyfriend is looking so happy. He's got this kind of happy glint in his eye. He looks like he's in a really good mood today. And then he turned his phone around to show me that all his tokens were on green. So, those kind of things make people happy. But, more than just the cryptocurrency price, we've got this technology. It's really a set of technologies, but a set of technologies that's giving us a kind of worldwide ledger, if you like, the ability to keep an audit trail or a bank statement of all the transactions. That's really what the Bitcoin blockchain is, or other blockchains are, a way of keeping track of all the transactions on a network. And that brings us to this quote from Don Tapscott, which I love, from his book, Blockchain Revolution. It's a good book if you haven't read it. A very accessible introduction to kind of what blockchain will do for business. And he says it fundamentally changes what we can do online, how we do it, and who can participate in that. So suddenly you've got a way of transacting. We had the Internet of Information, which was about sharing information. A website is really just a way of sharing peer-to-peer information. But now with blockchain, we can also share assets and other things of value peer-to-peer. So that's what the economists called the trust machine. And I think that trust aspect is what we're going to come back to again and again, is the fact that we can now do this trusted activity online. So, this is just one example of a sort of description, a visual description of how the system works. And what you see is that you've got party A, Alice, you've got party B. They can interact, and the system confirms the transaction. So there's no need for that credit card company or bank in the way. In the beginning, there was a Bitcoin blockchain. It was the sort of grandfather of them all. It still is the biggest blockchain. But now we're sort of developing into a marketplace, if you like, of different blockchains. So you've got public blockchains, what we call permissionless. So it's open source. Anyone can be a part of it. Anyone can build on it. So you've probably heard of Bitcoin or Ethereum. We've also got a flourishing of private enterprise blockchains or distributed ledgers. Those are different types of systems using some of the same properties, but they're closed, so you have to have permission to access them. It's a bit like having an intranet, if you like, rather than the internet. So you need to be given permission to be part of the system, and you know who the other parties in the system are. And then what we're moving to, which we're going to talk about later, is a new generation of blockchains. So blockchains are sort of becoming victims of their own success. The existing blockchains have problems of transaction speed, of scalability, and what we're looking at now is maybe potentially a new generation of blockchains, and maybe also blockchains being able to link together and interoperate with each other in the future. So perhaps what we'll see is different blockchains for different purposes, different use cases, and maybe not every blockchain has to do everything. So we've seen these kind of different ways. As I mentioned at the beginning, when I got involved in Bitcoin, it was really all about currencies and payments. No one really talked about the blockchain, other than as part of the Bitcoin network. Then we suddenly had what was actually in those days called Bitcoin 2.0, which was people realizing that you could use the blockchain for other applications outside of finance. Then along came smart contracts, the Ethereum blockchain, so suddenly you've got the ability to program money. If you have smart contracts, you can execute activities in a pre-agreed set of conditions, so suddenly you've got all these kind of other business functions that you can perform with the blockchain. And now we're moving into this kind of stage 4, stage 5. This is where I see we are now, which is blockchains becoming incredibly popular, more mainstream. But as you become more popular and more mainstream, what you actually get is the real world. So I want to do this, but I can't do it because it's too slow, or it's too expensive, or it doesn't work in an efficient way. So now what we're getting is a whole new wave of innovators trying to solve those problems. And part of that success has been down to the initial coin offering phenomenon, which I'm sure many of you are aware of. Raised billions of dollars already, and we're moving into this kind of tokenized economy where you can put any asset, if you like, on the blockchain. So you can have not just a token that functions as a digital currency, but also a token that functions maybe as some kind of digital IOU. So it could be any kind of asset that you want to keep track of, from anything from your house to, say, you know, a crypto kitty, which is a digital version of a cartoon cat that people are trading on the Ethereum blockchain, which just goes to show that people will literally trade in any market you can think of when it comes to digital currency. This year, we've had kind of blockbuster year for blockchain. We've had the ICO Summer of Love, as I call it. We've had it over 200, probably more, since I created this slide. Different token sales, everything from the biggest ones like Filecoin, EOS, Bancor, and so on, very successful, through to some small and obscure token sales like Trump Coin, making cryptocurrency great again. I'm not sure they've succeeded in that aim, but they're out there. They actually raised a fair bit of money. Bitcoin price, I think when I first made these slides, was at $8,000. Then it went up to $9,500. Now it's hovering somewhere between 11 and 12. So just in the last week or so, I've had to make about 4 or 5 different versions of these slides, which just shows that in cryptocurrency, you can't rest on your laurels. It's a very fast-changing environment. Outside of Bitcoin and Ethereum, you've got enterprise consortia expanding their funding, a lot of new members coming in from business, trying to understand this technology and see how it's going to impact on this sector. And you've got, as mentioned, the rise of these new generation platforms. So where are we going next? We want to build a token economy. A lot of people in the industry are very excited about, you know, what can tokens do? They can really create kind of private economies or private ecosystems, communities that will do particular things. And that could be business processes, but it could also be for social good. It could be change the way we do philanthropy, or it could be change the way we manage our healthcare information. So we're still at a very early stage of this technology, but it's moving incredibly fast. There's still a shortage of expertise, both on the strategic side. So implementation of real-world blockchain projects is hard. It's not an easy thing to do to get people to change the way they do business. And it's also hard to convince people to let you be the first. So if you have your proof of concept, you need one customer to say, yes, I'm going to take the risk of using blockchain, and I don't know what's going to happen. And until you get that one first customer as a blockchain startup, then you can't get more customers. So finding people that are expert in implementation is hard, but also there's a shortage of developers. So what's happening now is a lot of work to build developer academies, to train more developers, because if you want to scale and suddenly you don't have the ability to actually do that because you don't have the people to develop the products, you're in trouble. And also platforms are building up where you can use other programming languages that are not blockchain specific to build on top of blockchain. So people are finding clever solutions to the shortage of developers, but there is still a shortage out there. We're in a kind of period as well of regulatory uncertainty, particularly in regards to token sales. Every jurisdiction is sort of treating it differently. No one really knows what to do. Everyone's a bit scared, a bit freaked out by the amount of money going in. I mean, this year we've seen the investment in ICOs outstripping traditional venture capital investment in blockchain startups. So some countries are on the fence. They're saying, we're not sure what we're going to do yet. Other countries are outright saying, we don't want anything to do with this. So we don't really know exactly what's going to happen. And there's a whole question mark about whether or not tokens are going to be treated as securities, or some types of tokens are going to be securities and others are not. And we'll have sort of utility tokens versus security tokens maybe, subject to different types of regulations. So again, I think we're going to talk about that a bit further as we go along. I see this as a long-term investment, not a short-term fix. Obviously, there are people who want to get into this industry and make short-term money, and that will always happen. But it is a risk for the startups involved if they get huge amounts of money coming in and then investors pull out quite quickly just because they just want to make a quick buck. For those startups, they're trying to build their businesses and they need some long-term stability and some long-term investment and advice maybe as well from their investors about how to build their companies. Being a startup is hard, and the more support you can get, whether it's financial or business advice, the better. So this tech is really still in its infancy, and events like this are great because, as far as I understand, there's been already lots of meetups where some people here have come to this technology or learned about it for the first time, and they're now coming to these bigger events. And when I first went into Bitcoin, we had about 1,000 people in Amsterdam for a big Bitcoin Foundation event, and that was pretty much the entire Bitcoin sort of community around the world, bar a few people who couldn't come. And now we're seeing these kind of size of events every day, every week. So there's been a huge change in the level of interest in cryptocurrencies and blockchain, and I think that's fantastic. Nevertheless, there is a lot of hype out there, both hype in terms of prices, hype in terms of what the technology can do. It's not a panacea for everything. It doesn't fix everything. And when it comes to ICOs, there's a lot of potential for fraud. There's potential for losing your money. It's a very kind of Wild West atmosphere out there. So we're going to talk a bit later about how the marketplace is developing different types of data platforms and different types of advice services to help people navigate this kind of ICO minefield and find the companies and the tokens that are worthwhile investing in. And there are a lot of interesting projects out there, some of which we're going to hear about later. I mean, being on the stage up here now, I had this kind of rock star welcome with the music and the lights and everything. I feel a bit like when you go to a concert and, everybody's looking for the rock star, waiting for Radiohead, and I'm the kind of support act, where you're kind of sitting through going, come on, guys. We're waiting for Radiohead. So, you're going to see Radiohead in a few minutes. There's going to be some fantastic leading names in blockchain up here on the stage. And the organizers have put a wonderful set of people together. So this is me. You can find me on Twitter, Unblocked Events. I like to hear from blockchain newcomers because I have a resources page with lots of information just to get started on blockchain. But I also like to hear from experts because I'm always looking for speakers and people to join my events. I've got events coming up next year on energy, on creative industries, on healthcare, and probably some smaller events on other issues like digital identity, which is another big part of blockchain. So I hope to hear from you. I think we're going to have a fantastic day ahead of us. You're going to see a bit more of me. So, get used to seeing this red suit because it's going to be on stage a few more times during the day. But just for now, I'd really like to hand over to the next panel. We're going to hear now what happens after an ICO. So most of us have heard about this kind of huge influx of funding coming into ICOs, but we tend not to hear about what happens after an ICO is over. So when you're actually trying to build the company, how does it feel to be a startup in the ICO field? And we're just going to have the chairs come up to the stage. We've got John Russell from TechCrunch who's going to moderate this next panel, and some of the team from Go, who's one of the most successful ICOs of the last year. are going to come up and just tell us a bit about their process. I was speaking to someone the other day who's a marketing person who's worked on various ICO marketing campaigns, and she said, it's really strange, when the token sale finishes, basically all people come to me to talk about is why the price of the token has dropped. And they're suddenly no longer interested in any of my marketing messages. So I think that that's kind of an interesting phenomenon to think, this growth of funding in ICOs is really just the first step, and actually it's about building a company that's hopefully going to be around for a long time. So thanks very much, everybody. Look forward to seeing you all throughout the day. I'm going to invite the next set of speakers up to the stage.